Chapter 10 Plan 2 with several emergency measures. Today's horoscope: avoid anything pink today. You will meet someone who will help you see things in a new light. We had the house to ourselves. Marsha's mum had gone off to meet her boyfriend, and now Marsha lay across an armchair with her gangly legs dangling over one arm and her hands behind her head. How could she be so relaxed? I sat hunched on the edge of my seat, staring at the telephone. We ring Norman, said Marsha. We tell him something that makes him come round here, something that will make him go down to the cellar. Treasure, tell him there's something valuable down there. Marsha shook her head and gazed at the ceiling. Norman's not a pirate, he's an extraterrestrial. Suppose we let him believe we know something about him. Tell him we've got something of his in our cellar. I was edgy. We've only got one chance to get this right. He won't fall for it twice. It's got to be good. I know. We have to let him think we've got something important on him, but without telling him what. This was beginning to sound like complicated espionage stuff to me. You're going to make the call, aren't you? I asked. Stop fretting and hand me the phone. Marsha took several tissues and shoved them over the mouthpiece. A moment later she dialed, and I'd turned into a nervous wreck. Yes, again. Nervous wrecks are my speciality. Marsha cleared her throat. Norman Rourke. Good grief. Marsha's voice had dropped 2 octaves. It even made me jump. It sounded as if she was talking from beyond the grave. We know all about you. We know what you're up to, you and your family. Marsha spoke slowly and deliberately. We have something of yours, something very important, something secret, something you wouldn't want anyone to know about. If you want us to keep quiet, you better get over here fast, very fast, or we're going to the authorities, and you know what that means, Norman. Marsha spouted her dress and put down the phone. She let out a long breath and collapsed back on the settee. She looked exhausted. Several minutes ticked by. I bit my lip. Do you think he'll come? Definitely. Marsha jumped up again and zipped into the cellar. I'm taking the light bulb out so it's completely dark. She called back. Okay, are we ready? Rob, you look like a ghost. You're not going to faint on me, are you? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass panel, we could see a dark shape looming. It's him, said Marsha, and I was glad to see that even she looked a bit rattled. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Norman slunk in, scowling at the pair of us. You, he sneered as soon as he clapped eyes on me. I might have known. It's the boy who's going to save the world. He turned on Marsha. So who are you then? The deputy sheriff? You won't think you're so clever when you see what we've got, Marsha said quietly, and she fixed him with one of her hooded glares. Oh yeah, don't tell me you found one of our spaceships in your back garden. It's something a lot better than that, said Marsha. It's down here. If you know what's good for you and your family, you'd better take a look. She stood to one side and showed him the open cellar door. Norman frowned, paused, and stepped inside. Bang! The door slammed and I turned the key. In an instant, Norman was hammering from the inside. Let me out, you slimy rats! Let me out of here! We listened to him for a moment and watched the door quivering as he rained blows on the inside, but there was no way you could get out. We went back to the front room and sat in triumph. We could still hear his shouts, but they were distant now, and after a while he stopped. He's probably starting to change, I muttered. Marsha frowned. We have a small problem, she began. I wish I'd thought of it before. We can't see if Norman's changed unless we open the cellar door. If we open the cellar door, he'll escape. A small problem? It seemed like a major catastrophe to me. What a situation to be in. We had to open the door to see, but we couldn't open the door or he'd escape. Marsha and I pondered our dilemma, and a depressing silence began to fill the front room, a silence that was only broken by faint cries. I sat up and listened. The whimpering seemed strange, as if someone was really crying. Was Norman sobbing in the cellar? Marsha had noticed too, and we gazed at each other in puzzlement. I went to the door. The crying wasn't coming from the cellar. It was from beyond the front door. We crept across the hall. There was definitely someone or something crying outside. Marsha whispered, I'll open the door and you rush out and surprise them. How about I open the door and you rush out? I suggested. We opened the door and we both rush out, Marsha said. So we did. We dashed out and there was a baby. Norman's little sister. Petal was sitting in her pushchair and crying and waving her little fists in the air. Her name's Petal, I groaned, as Marsha pushed her inside. What do we do? Why did Norman bring his little sister with him? Marcia demanded crossly. I don't know, ask him. Maybe he was looking after her when we rang and there was nobody at home to keep an eye on her, so we had to bring her. Didn't you notice he had a baby with him when he arrived? Marcia snapped. No, did you? We stared at each other angrily. Marcia put her hands into her head and took several deep breaths. We'll have to take her back to their house. That's crazy. The first thing the Vauxes will do is ask us why we've got their baby, and suppose they're out. We hand her to the police then. Are you mad? They'll ask us where we got her from. They'll ask hundreds of questions. They know us already, remember? What was it? Camembert or Gorgonzola? You know what they're like. Petal was still crying. Can't you stop her making that noise? How am I supposed to do that? You tell me, you're the girl. Me and my big mouth. As soon as I said it, I wished the pavement would open up and swallow me whole. Marcia stopped dead. What exactly do you mean by that, Rob? Are babies a girl thing only? I don't think so. Are boys banned from looking after babies? I don't think so. Are boys unable to look after babies? I don't think so. She glared at me. I was rapidly losing count of how many times Marcia glared at me these days. You're in this too, Rob. We're going to have to look after this baby, and I mean we, not me, by myself, on my own, without your help, but both of us. Got it? She paused. Her nose wrinkled up and she added in a slightly scared kind of voice, They have nappies and stuff. We both glanced at Petal. Nappies were definitely not on the top of my list of what to do with a yelling baby. Maybe she's hungry, I suggested. Maybe her nappy needs changing, muttered Marcia. Let's try the easy end first, I said, wheeling the pushchair to the kitchen. What do you think Small Space wants to eat? Marcia shook her head. Doesn't really matter, Rob, does it? I don't think Mum buys alien food very often. It's not the sort of thing we have much call for, really. Marcia had a point, I suppose. She opened the fridge and peered inside. She'll have to have cheese on toast. It's the only thing I know how to cook. Can you stop her yelling? Pick her up or something. I stared at the screaming infant. Pick her up. Ah, she might do something like wee on me or throw up. I've got an uncle and aunt with a little baby, and he's always doing stuff like that. I mean, he just leaks everywhere. I looked around for some kind of protection, but all I could find was a big black bin liner and some huge pink rubber gloves. I tore a hole in the bottom of the liner, one on each side, and put it over my head. I stuck my hands in the gloves. Marcia fell about. What are you doing? I pulled the edges of the sack down round my legs and I began unfastening blubber bags from the pushchair. Listen, I'm not going to have a baby sick all over my clothes, okay? If you say so, Marcia started cutting slim slices of cheese. But she was still laughing. I could tell by the way her shoulders went up and down. I tried calming the baby. I clutched to my shoulder and bounced her up and down, but it didn't seem to make much difference. She carried on screaming into my left ear hole until my brain began ringing. It was like having an entire ambulance station stuck inside your head. I sat her back in her pushchair and tried to entertain her by pulling stupid faces. Look, funny face, I said. I went cross-eyed. I pulled out my ears. I made silly noises. I stuck out my tongue. That's when baby hit me. Bam! Boy, could she pack a punch. I crashed backwards and slammed against the open fridge. Half the contents came raining down on my head. Have you ever noticed what people put in their fridges? I'll tell you, wet, cold things. Almost everything that goes into a fridge is wet or cold or both. My head was treated to a shampoo of milk, eggs, yogurt, bacon slices, a piece of fish, fruit juice, tomatoes. Now look what you've done, cried Marcia. And you were worried about the baby being sick. Rob, the entire fridge has just thrown up all over you. Look at the mess you've made. Can't you do anything helpful? There was a muffled yell from the cellar. What's going on out there? Let me out! Shut up, I shouted back. Then we realised that the baby had stopped crying. Do you know what she was doing now? Laughing at me. You see, it's like I said, everyone does. How horrible can a baby get? First she smacks me in the face and then she laughs at me. There is no justice.